Welcome back, everybody, to H2Go. It's been a few weeks since we reached out to you guys and giving you some content here, but we are alive and we're well, so we're here to bring you some content, some playoff content here at Area 51 Sports Network. We are the game. Jamie, how are you doing? From what I understand, you've been going through a move these past few weeks.
Man, it's been a time and a half. Yeah, I was sick there for a couple weeks. Pretty much dead to the world. Could barely talk for a bit there. Then like you said, the move it's going pretty well. Four cats and a dog now, so we'll see how all we'll see how all that that unfolds now in the future. But hockey's the one thing steady here at the moment. We're getting underway in the playoff season, baby.
Yeah, and that's the big thing here too. We're getting underway, and from what I understand, you have your most prized possession, the Soda Stream, all transported and everything.
Oh, absolutely. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, exactly. You got the Soda Stream ready to go, and unfortunately for Jamie, Philadelphia is not there. But you are. Before we
Next
get
year.
started, what series are you most on the lookout for? Like what one are you most excited for?
I mean, there's a lot of good ones coming up this year. I think we got kind of blessed for this year. We got some questionable ones as well, like the Rangers and Devils. I think that's a crapshoot. The Stars and Wilds kind of a crapshoot, but the one that I'm looking most forward to, I'd say the Oilers and the Kings, just because if any team's going to shut Connor McDavid down, like out of the West, I think it's going to be the Kings. Just the roster configuration, but we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, so we're gonna get right to it here. We're gonna start off in the Eastern Conference. We'll start with the President's Trophy winning Boston Bruins. So it's been a hot minute since a team that has won both the President's Trophy and the Stanley Cup. 2013 was the last time with the Chicago Blackhawks. In 2008, 2008, yeah, I think so. The last time with the Detroit Red Wings. So those are the
Yeah,
last two times. So only two times in the last what is that, 15 years?
yeah.
So the Boston Bruins, they had the best regular season in history now, as I'm sure we've all heard about. And they are set to play off against the Florida Panthers, who have been playing playoff hockey for the last month and a bit now, just trying to scrape their way in. And I think that there's something to be said for that kind of team. But Jamie, what's your takeaways heading into this series?
I mean, we kind of touched on that, like before we start recording here. The Panthers have been kind of playing playoff hockey for the last few weeks here, trying to secure their spot, beating out the I'm gonna beforehand. Good job to the Florida Panthers and New York Islanders for taking out the Pittsburgh Penguins. Much appreciated there. But no, like I said, they've been playing playoff hockey now for a bit. That's not a team I'd want to face too early in the first round. But that being said, the Bruins have had the best season, the best regular season of all time. I don't know. I think it's still pretty one sided overall. But that being said, if an upset happens, I wouldn't be too shocked here. How are you viewing this one?
Well, see, I think that it's a mismatch on quite a few levels here. Now, Linus Ulmark, I have evolving hockey stats up here, and Linus Ulmark was the third best in goals saved above expected, and for goals saved above average, he's number one. So now he's stopping a lot more than like he's not facing as many shots as a lot of these guys. As it's a pretty good team structure that they play with in Boston, but I think the goalie's a mismatch. I think the defense is a little bit of a mismatch, but I think where Florida can sort of make up for that is with their forward group, a little more balanced than they were last year. I think adding Matt Kachuk, replacing Jonathan Huberdeau with him, I think that has sort of helped them move into a better rounded kind of unit. Now, one matchup I'll be paying attention to is Matt Kachuk versus Brad Marchand. Inject that one right into my veins.
Oh, I
I
haven't thought about that.
right. It's going to be between 4 and 7 games of that, and Boston's a team that knows how to play playoff hockey, and frankly, Matt Kachuk's going to have to find a way to get under their skin, get them to draw penalties, and get give his team chances with the man advantage. So ultimately, I think special teams are going to be a huge part of the series.
And something to note on too is a lot of the guys in the Bruins, like their core pieces, like Pasternak, Marchand, Bergeron, for example, like the main key fixtures there that they're building with. This isn't their first rodeo either. They've also gone deep in years prior as well. I feel like they just have the overall experience to be able to take this out, pretty quick, right? Like you said, it could go the distance, it may not. I got the Bruins in 5, just given the experience, and like you said, the mismatch, like, up and down the roster, like the goalie, the defense, all that as well. I I don't know. I don't want to see the Bruins go too far, but I don't think anybody does.
It might
But
be inevitable.
yeah, we might be living a dark reality here.
No, absolutely. Now I also had the Bruins in 5, the gentleman's sweep. I don't
Yeah.
think I think this Florida team, we could sit there and say too talented. Although I do think that there is a chance this one does end with a sweep. I do think Florida also has potential to make it a longer series than a lot of us expect. And again, with Alex Lyon, he saved a lot of people's fantasy seasons, and he definitely made them. And I know he did for you in one league. And ultimately, I do think that will come into play here. Now, obviously, he doesn't have experience starting games in the NHL playoffs, but I don't think it's something that you can discount here.
No, and the thing is too, if you don't have the playoff experience at the NHL level, I know it's a lot more magnified, a lot more eyeballs, a lot more pressure, but a lot of these players who make the NHL in general, they've been at the best of the best, since they were kids more often than not. They've played in big games before, so it's not like if the series went to game 7, it's not like these guys have never been to a game 7 before in their life. Just may not have done it at the biggest stage. So we can see how all the lights kind of affect that.
No, absolutely. And I don't know. Again, like you said, it's a team that's uber experienced, and they're guys who have played in the brightest of lights. So I don't think that there's much more to be said on that. Do you have any last comments on that one?
You know, I know we both got the Bruins in 5, but realistically, if the Panthers came out and absolutely shelled the Bruins and won the 4-game sweep, I think the entire world would be pretty
Well,
happy.
well, the last time a team was this heavily favored, the 2019 Tampa Bay Lightning. We all know what happened next, but we know what happened the year after. So,
Yeah.
but one thing I think that we should look out for, especially for fantasy purposes here for your playoff pools, is if Boston gets up in the series, it's a team that's run with a two goalie tandem all season long. If they go up 3-0 in the series, what are the odds we see Jeremy Swayman in the game 4? Or if Ulmer tweaks something, maybe they don't risk that. Give him a night off. So something to keep an eye on. So maybe adding a little bit of extra value there for Jeremy Swayman. Um, but moving on, Toronto versus Tampa Bay. What are your initial thoughts on this? I'd like to hear yours before I get mine out there.
Uh, I mean, this could go any way imaginable. Th- Uh, I don't know. They got demons in there. They got demons everywhere, man. The Leafs might be cursed on this one, but the Lightning have gone the distance in what the last 3 years, gone to the finals. Is it won the cup first two there, then lost to the Avs last year? Was it? Is that how it went down?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you got
So
it.
I don't know. This Tampa team, it's not the same as it was in years past. But that being said, it's still better than 95% of the NHL. I got the Leafs winning in 7. I know that sounds kind of insane, but at
Ooh.
some point it has to happen. At some point, history will be rewritten. This has to happen at some point. I'm doubling down.
Well, I'll tell you, I have the Leafs in 6, and like I see, I've been saying this all season long. There's only one. There's only two scenarios here: Tampa in 7, Toronto in 6. Although I do think there is a Toronto in 7 scenario. Now,
I,
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 I
I got it
I'm of
too.
two minds here. I think you need to consider Toronto needs to bypass these ghosts of playoff pasts and not give them a chance to creep up in a seventh and deciding game. But I also do think that sometimes you do need to overcome that to move on. And I've said this all the time now. I don't necessarily have Toronto winning the cup, but I've always said that when they get past the first round, that they're going to go deep. And I think that that's just a monkey off the back. I think for Toronto, for it, now, I'm curious to know, what do you think Tampa's path to victory is?
Do you mean with the series, or do you mean like winning the
How,
cup? I assume series.
how did they win this series against Toronto?
Uh, I think this is one. I think it comes down to how they protect the goalies and how they insulate their own like defensive schemes.
Mhm.
Both teams can go pound for pound offense. Stamkos, Cooch, Point as the main three for Tampa. Then what? Marner, Matthews, Tavares is the main three. Maybe Nylander instead of one of those guys. They can go pound for pound when it comes to scoring. But I think it's going to come down to how they can really insulate and play as a full unit. The Lightning have done it for the past 3 years and gone deep. We'll see. We'll see if the Leafs can do it. The Leafs, their young guys are starting to mature now as well. You see guys starting to buy in a little bit more, play a little bit more forecheck heavy. You see different like schemes getting rolled out as the players mature. They're more accepting to, oh yeah, we can't just go out and score 75 goals and win a game. It's not how it works in the playoffs, so we'll see how all that breaks down with the overall systems, with especially with the additions that the Leafs have made, like Ryan O'Reilly, Luke Shen, guys that kind of have that ability to kind of insulate themselves into a system and create, matchup chaos, which I don't think the Leafs have had in the last few years.
Well, yeah, no, like they haven't quite had that disruptor kind of element to their game. Now, I do think Tampa Bay is a little banged up heading into the series. They've been nursing injuries throughout the year from Sergachev, Hedman, and I think on paper Toronto should win this series. But if Tampa can can essentially turn that into a coin, I think you almost have to go with the better goalie here. And if it gets to a game 7, then you're leaving it up to chance for Andrei Vasilevsky to steal one. And if you're putting that up to chance, like I double down on that any day. Now, one last thing here. What do you think Toronto's path to victory is?
I'm not too sure. I think they have to figure out a way to solve the Lightning's like their ability to play as a team is something that I don't think we've seen in the NHL now in a long time. I'd say probably the early like 2010 Bruins would probably be the comparable for that in terms of being able to play as a full unit, top to bottom, being able to just, out muscle, outmaneuver guys, just being on the same wavelength. I think if the Leafs can click all together, all down through the lineup, if they can start clicking, the chemistry can kind of gel. I think they can put it together to be able to outmuscle Tampa here. But I don't know. Years past, it's looked like it may have been able to happen, but we've seen where that's gone.
Well, I think the key for Toronto right now is essentially that your your star players, the guys that you're paying these big bucks to, have to be the best players in the series. And
Yeah.
we're still yet to see Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner over take over an entire series and be the best players in that series for the whole duration. And I think with the ads like Ryan O'Reilly, that sort of gives another element, and so now it allows you to load up your top 6. Now Tampa Bay likes to spread out their defensive depth across 3 pairs, but if that top 6 loaded up, you might have to have 2 of those guys on the ice. And keep in mind they're also without Ryan McDonough, who they traded last summer. So he had a big hand in defeating Toronto. And any last thoughts on this before we move on?
Like you were saying about Ryan O'Reilly, it's an interesting piece to add. He was on that St. Louis Blues team that won the cup there in 2019. He was an integral part of that. So you like to believe some of the experience he's had of being able to, be in those tight series, be in those moments of the do and die, the fight or flight, being able to figure out, how we're going to break it down. And this is a cerebral player as well. He's good in the dot, good at defense, offense. Like you said, you can put him in the top 6. He can command the bottom 6 as well in a bit more of a two-way capacity. He creates so much of a nightmare for matchups in the sense of you don't know how that roster is going to look, that forward core, that top 9 is going to look on any given night. So like that's something you can't really plan for either if you're John Cooper and the Lightning. But when it comes to the talent, I don't know if it matters for that.
And I'm not sure either. And like coaching does go a long way, but ultimately, Jamie, you said you have Leafs in 7. You have them facing their demons head on.
Man, they got to do it. I they got to do it. I don't know. There's no other way to put it. At some point, you got to be able to win the big one. To them, the game 7 is the big one. Well, game 6, 7. The game to get put them in round 2. That's the big game. They've had these moments for how many years now? Like something's got to give. Something has to give. I feel like it has to be now, or it may not. It may never happen. It just may never happen. This core might not be back next summer. I don't know how you feel about that. I'm sure we'll talk about that in the coming weeks. But
Yeah, well, we'll know in a few weeks, and we'll kind of have a better idea then. But moving on here, a series that you have a bit of a stake in here, the Rangers versus the Devils. What are your thoughts on this one?
There's a lot of different schools of thought that you can have with this one. The Rangers definitely got the experience on the roster in terms of going deep, the NHL game experience as well. I know some players are a bit younger on their roster, but the guys who are younger, like the Lafrenières and the Kakos, they're they're not the main pieces of that team. Whereas like the Devils, for example, you got Jack Hughes, you got Nico Hischier, younger guys haven't been here a whole lot, haven't been around the game a whole lot at the pro level. I got the Rangers in 6. I think the experience and the physicality is going to wear the Devils down. And even if the Devils do win this series, you go to round 2. I don't know. They might be too banged up to be able to take down the Canes or the Islanders. So, how do
Well,
you view this one?
see, I think the whole idea of inexperience, like heading into the playoffs, it sticks around, and it does stick around for a reason, because like we see young teams in the playoffs make little critical errors along the way, but in the playoffs, though, those add up, and like even if it's something that results in a goal even in game 4 or 5, like, these things add up, and all roads lead home in the playoffs. And I do think I have the Rangers taking this one, and it's really because they have the guys who, when the games tighten up, they know what they need to do, and they know how to find those lanes. Like, for example, like the Rangers have guys who can bump and grind you. I'm not sure that the Devils really have that kind of element. Now, that being said, I do think that Andre Palat, if it is going to be the X factor here for the Devils, if they managed to pull it out. But I have the Rangers in 6, because I do think that these are two evenly matched teams. But for the inexperienced team to overcome a Vezina caliber goalie, if Shesterkin is at the top of his game, I have the Rangers winning this one in 6. But if not, it might go 7. But either way, I have the Rangers winning. Who do you got?
Yeah, I got the Rangers in 6. The big thing is too, like the Devils, for example, they're one of the best goal scoring teams in regular season. But like you said, they're going against a guy who's arguably a top 3 goalie, like Igor Shesterkin's. Like, do you take the high octane goal scoring in a series where the format's going to be physical, defensive? The playoffs is bump and grind, not as much space. But that being said, the Devils, they've been creating space all year. They got shifty forwards. Jack Hughes being at the center of that. I don't know. This seems like it could go either way. Can the offense solve the physical defense and the high end goalie, or can the experience and the well rounded team? I don't want to say the Rangers are well rounded, but they got higher end pieces in across more places, if that makes sense. And I'd rather bank on Patrick Kane than almost any other player. So
And at the deadline, they literally added 2 Stanley Cup champions, Patrick Kane, Vladimir Tarasenko.
and Kane's won multiple.
He's won multiple. He scored big goals in those games, and Tarasenko's done the same. So, I think this one's pretty close to a coin flip, but I do think that tie goes to the experience in this case.
Agreed.
And any more thoughts on that one before we move on?
No, I don't think I got it in there. Like you said, Andre Palat's probably the X factor on that. And I'd say for the Rangers, again, like you mentioned, Igor Shesterkin's kind of like the big question mark. I know the Rangers have been kind of not inconsistent this year, but they've been good at different points throughout the year. Like, they haven't all been elite at the same time, like forward, D, and goalie, the 3 different stages of the game. Like, they haven't been clicking at the same level the entire year. So we'll see if they can get hot at the right time, they might be able to go pretty deep.
Yeah, I agree. Now, moving on to the last one here in the Eastern Conference, the Islanders versus the Hurricanes. Now, this one's interesting because I think that you have one team who's a clear favorite to win, but then at the other end, you have a team that can play that kind of game. Carolina likes to play low event, but at the other end, you have a team that's built for this moment. They are built for playoff hockey. So, Jamie? What are your thoughts on the New York Islanders versus the Carolina Hurricanes?
I think this is even more of a coin flip than the Rangers and the Devils, if I'm being honest. It's two teams that can kind of play a similar style. The Canes are a bit more fun to watch, obviously, but they also play a pretty tough element. They got good pieces in good places as well. They got guys like Jakob Slavin, Brad Pesci as well. Then you look down between the pipes. Freddie Anderson's, he phenomenal goaltender there. Up and down in terms of their forward core. You got a bunch of different variety there in terms of the play styles. Then you look at the Islanders, rough and tough. They're starting to get to the more modern style of non 2002 hockey. They're finally starting to evolve a bit more high octane offense on that team, but still has like their defensive core is like what, like Adam Petlick, Ryan Pulock. There's like two of like some of the main guys there. pretty hard to play against. And Ilya Sorokin, top 10 goalie, if not higher than that.
5 even.
Right, like maybe top 3 on some days. So I think this is going to go to distance. Ultimately, the Hurricanes were first place in that division for a reason. Barzell also hasn't been playing for the last like month or more for the Islanders, so he's going to come back. Maybe he's not fresh. Maybe he's a little bit rusty on that. To try to integrate him somewhere, maybe your line chemistry gets a little bit, a little bit messy there at times. Ultimately, I give it to the Canes in 7, but realistically, if the Islanders won in anything less than 7, I wouldn't be shocked either. I'm not sure how you got this one laying out, but
Well, it's not quite the same. I have it going to 7, but I have the Islanders taking it, and
see,
it for me it comes down to this might be part of my scars as a Leafs fan watching Frederick Anderson, but I don't know if you've seen game sevens or game 5 in the bubble year. I don't know if you've seen these, Jamie, but Frederick Anderson has a tendency to give up the worst goals at the worst times, and he has a track record of it too. It's not like just like a one-off or something that happened again and just never happened. uh, but this is something that's been a trend with him, and I don't know, like, and it happened last year against the Rangers, and although he was hurt, I think it was Kochetkov,
yeah.
but ultimately, it's not that I don't have faith in Frederick Anderson as a goalie. I just, I've seen it too many times, and we've seen this Carolina team struggle to get over the hump. In a similar but not quite the same way to Toronto, you need to show me that you can do it before we put the faith in you there, and I think that that's the big thing for me. So I think that Sorokin is going to keep this close, and the Islanders, who have found their scoring touch down the stretch, who have been playing fantastic hockey, as Carolina's kind of backed into first place there. So ultimately, I have the Islanders in 7 for those reasons. What are your thoughts on that?
And something to touch on too is that you have the Islanders in 7. Another piece that you kind of have to look at here for the Hurricanes is how deep can this team actually go when they're missing their top 2 player on that team, if not probably the best, and Andrei Svechnikov. He's out for the entire season, right? Like, is he supposed to come back from the playoffs? I'm pretty sure he's like done. Like,
Savech?
yeah, like he's done for the entirety of it, right? Like
Yeah,
he's not.
he's out for the year for the playoffs, torn ACL.
Yeah, see, like that's such a big piece for that team to miss as well. It's like you got Sebastian Aho. I mean, Sebastian Aho is going to go against Sebastian Aho this series, so we'll see. We'll see
Yep.
how that matchup goes. That's matchup hell, but
Battle of Sebastian Ahos.
right.
Who
So
would have thought we were going to say that?
not me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Aho's missing his right hand man. So when you're going against a team that's as physical as the Islanders and you're playing it in a format that the NHL playoffs regularly play in of rough and tough hockey, I don't know how this Hurricanes team is going to be able to come out. Again, I have them in 7. I think the pedigree's going to come out and do this. They've done something right. It's not like Svechnikov went down and they just lost every other game, known to mankind. They find ways to win anyways, but the Islanders are going to be a pretty stiff competition. So either way, I think this is going to go the distance.
I think so too. For me, it's just hard not to see it. A little bit of a depleted Carolina team, but I think they do look a lot better than they did last year at this
Yeah.
time. But for what it's worth, I think that this one's pretty close to a toss-up, and I think that Sorokin makes it that way. He makes it close enough, and it's a matter of how many can they put behind Frederick Anderson, make Carolina play a bit uncomfortable because even though their playoff ghosts might not be as severe as some other teams, they're still there, and very similar to Colorado, can't get over that second round hump. But can they do that? I guess we'll see. Any last thoughts on this one before we hop out to the West?
I think the East is an absolute crapshoot this year in terms of like who's even going to get out of round 1. Like I feel like the Bruins are going to steamroll. You know, Leafs Lightning that could go either way. Canes Islanders could go either way. Rangers Devils could go either way. I don't know. I think we got some pretty good matchups here. But that being said, I don't want to get too far into this one. I don't like the playoff format at all. I'm not a big fan of the wild card system. I much prefer the 1 to 8. But we'll see what happens here.
Take notice, Gary.
Yeah, right. Pay
Out
attention,
to the
man.
West. We're looking at the team that won the Central Division on the last day of the season. The Colorado Avalanche will take on the first time in the NHL playoffs, Seattle Kraken. And I think that the Kraken came out and surprised a lot of us this year. I think we expected a step. I'm not sure we expected one this big. A very good team, and Phil Grubauer having a decent season as a bounce back. This is one of the more interesting ones to me because the reigning Stanley Cup champions takes on the Seattle Kraken. Who do you have? Like, I'm really curious of this because I've literally seen almost every result from every different amount of games to do it. So I'm interested to hear what you got.
I agree with you fully on this one. I think this is an absolute like bracket destroyer right here. I think this might be like one of the most weird ones because the reigning champs, they don't got Gabe Landeskog. Makar's been hurt for the last couple of months, like off and on. I still don't know what's so we don't know what kind of condition that team's fully in terms of health wise.
I think McCarr's ready for game one. I think
Is he? Is he?
I think. Don't quote me on that here. Yeah. Go on. I'll confirm.
I don't think we know what kind of condition that team is in health wise fully. Like, Makar's missed some time here and there. Other guys have gone down randomly as well. They don't got their captain. I know that's not the big thing when your best player is Nathan McKinnon and Mikko Rantanen, but the Kraken don't have the experience. They have some good performances. They took a big step more than anybody really thought. I think when you compare, apples to apples here, player to player, position to position, I think the Avs just outrank them. I have the Avs 1-5, but that being said, I don't think that's the right call to make. I don't know.
No
That being
call's
said,
the right call.
no, exactly. Maybe it's one of those things. Nathan McKinnon just helped me win a championship in fantasy, so like maybe I have the bias there, but I don't know. I got the Avs in 5. I don't think I can see a world where the Kraken can win 4 games against the reigning champs, especially with how powerful that team is top to bottom. Like, I know we say, the playoffs are a different animal, but the NHL is also a different animal when it comes to the evolution of it. I feel like we're not going to see like 2-1 hockey games in the playoffs. I think we're still going to see like 6 and 7 goal games. Like in the sense of combined score, not just 7 goals aside. I think the Avs can turn any game into an absolute shootout. I don't think this series is going to be indifferent. I have the Avs in 5 for that reason. Let's hear what you got going here.
No, I got the Avalanche in 4. Again, like a very large. Yeah, I know, right? You pick a sweep, and I find that that's rare with a lot of like writers and podcasters these days. You don't get sweeps. You don't get people predicting them. It's like in March Madness where you're afraid to, where it's like you go down to all the 1 seeds and you just click the 1 seeds to advance. And
yeah,
like a couple of our friends picked Purdue to win it all, and
losers.
Yeah, and somehow that absolutely didn't nuke Matt's bracket.
No, he still came in second. He lost by like 10 points, but he also had, I think it was like Miami and Texas going the distance there.
Okay.
He had both of those teams going to the Final Four, so it's like that's really what helped him on that. But
okay, well, yeah, well, Colorado, it's a team. They're 8-1-1 in their last 10. Like they're getting hot at the right time, and I know that that's a very cliche thing to say, but I don't think that you can undervalue that. Getting hot at the right time, it's perfect, and for a team that basically saw an opening and said, hey, we could still win the Central and play a wild card team instead of having to stick around to play one of Dallas or Minnesota. I don't know, like there's something about like I always talk about teams that have been playing playoff hockey for the last month. Colorado is peaking at the right time, and I just don't think that could be underrated. I think they're going to make quick business here of Seattle, but and apologies to Seattle fans.
So, something to add there is like, the Avs won the Central Division. They didn't have Landeskog at all this year. He's a top line left wing on every NHL team across the board. So it's like they still won while missing something of that, that level of impact. I just don't see a reality where a team that's led by Jared McCann as the main offensive piece can win 4 games. I don't see that reality happening. It doesn't make sense to me.
No, and I don't think that there's a whole lot to be said about this. And even Alex Georgiev, who they acquired last offseason, it'll be interesting to see how he handles his first playoffs as a starting netminder. But
that's true.
For what it's worth, he's been easily one of the better goaltenders these for the last little bit. And hold on, I'll pull it up right here. Goals saved above expected. He sits 12th. What was it? Goals saved above average. He's sixth in the NHL there, and so and he's right in the company there with UC Saros, Jake Ottinger, Andre Vasilevsky. He's right up there in terms of metrics there, and that could very well be a product of the team in front of him. But I don't think that we could sleep on Alex Georgiev anymore.
No, and the thing is too that if the team's helping them get to that level, it's not like Nathan McKinnon's playing goalie, right? At the end of the day, the dude made the saves to get to that point. But that being said, the team absolutely helps him
And they wrote him on the
though.
back half of back to backs. Had how many games did he play? He played 62 games.
Did
So
he actually?
yeah, something to keep in mind for next year too.
Hot damn!
He slowly became a workhorse as Pavel Francouz went down, and
Holy smokes!
so I don't know, something to keep in mind for your fantasy drafts next year. A guy who might play a lot of games on a pretty good team, good
Yeah,
rack of wins.
didn't realize he played 62 this year. That's a lot of games for a goalie.
I just know down the stretch, I remember he played a few second half of back to
Interesting.
backs kind of thing. So
Interesting.
yeah. Anyway, nonetheless, and anything else you want to say on that? I don't think that there's a whole lot to say on this series, but
Nah,
I, you know,
mm,
I do hope Seattle proves me wrong here. I'm a big fan of some of the guys there, especially Jared McCann. I'd like to see him
right.
have a bit of a coming out party in the playoffs.
All I'll say is, Kraken fans enjoy the playoffs while you can. It's your first time here. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
It's not fun.
No, it sucks. The
It
playoffs
does.
suck. I'm glad I don't have to have too many stakes in this one. The Flyers aren't there, so
Yeah, you have your sights set on the 8th of May.
I do indeed.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. Also, Anaheim getting the top odds there.
Friggin' Anaheim, man. If they get Connor Bedard, that and Zegers together, I might look like quite the
Zegers,
fool.
McTavish,
Oh, I didn't even think about McTavish.
very, and they got some good defensemen coming up there. Yeah, I don't know. I don't
Ah,
know. Who,
Anaheim
so,
might be the new
who knows if they
hotspot.
win? We might be talking about them at this time next year.
We'll see what happens.
You know. Now a team that I know Jamie has a weird eternal hatred for, the Dallas Stars.
Man, they're just such a random ass hockey team. They're so
Oh,
random. Yeah, but that being said,
we
I
are
got
big Minnesota fans. I will say that we
right.
do enjoy. We are very avid Kirill Kaprizov enjoyers, Minnesota Wild enjoyers, just
Right.
overall.
That being said, I got my precious Minnesota Wild falling to the Dallas Stars in 7 games. Just top to bottom, when you compare the rosters, I don't know. The Stars have so much more firepower across a lot of different places of the roster. But that being said, the Minnesota Wild are an absolute enigma of a hockey team. You don't expect them to win the cup. You don't expect them to go super deep, but they always put up a fight. Every part of the year, they all. I don't know. To me, you can't count the Minnesota Wild out of any game. I trust that roster top to bottom. Kaprizov's coming back. They got weird physical depth that's made for the playoffs. Like guys like Ryan Hartman, he fits in that play style so well. And then even on defense as well, guys like Jonas Brodin, you're more like two-way guys kind of step in there as well. So they got pieces across the roster for a playoff series. But that being said, I just think the Stars outclass them top to bottom, and Jake Ottinger as well. When you look at the goalie comparables there, I don't know. It's hard not to bank on a guy like that.
No, I agree. And how many games you got?
I got him going 7.
Mm, not bad because I think there's a few ways of looking at this one.
Now,
Dallas has been a very good team all year. Breakouts. Well, I don't know if you call them breakouts from
yeah,
Robertson. He's had seasons in the past. Rupee Hintz, Wyatt Johnston's coming out party. They have some young guys, but they also got some of that experience from Sagan, Jamie Benn, and I think a lot of us forget they did go to the Stanley Cup Finals a few years ago there in the playoff bubble. So
they indeed.
they've got experience. Now the Minnesota Wild, when Kaprizov went down with his injury there about a month ago, you could tell that they found a different way to adapt, and they said, you know what, we are missing our 50 goal man or our potential 50 goal man. I don't think he's actually scored 50, but
I don't think so either.
he's paced it, and I think he was pacing it this year. But our 40 goal man or whatever the hell you want to call him, he's out, and we're not going to be able to shoot the lights out to win hockey games. So we're going to have to come together as a team. So they found different ways to win, and I do think that that's a way you need to be come playoff time. You need to have different ways to win in your arsenal, and I think Minnesota has that. And I really do feel bad picking Dallas in 6 here, but I I don't know, like it is a very even series, and I don't know, man.
I wouldn't want to be a Dallas Stars fan or a Minnesota Wild fan because, like, I think this is as close as it gets in terms of predictability. I had a really hard time. I was kind of sat down for a while. I didn't know Stars were Wild because, like you said, the Stars have so much firepower. Wyatt Johnston, Jason Robertson, Rupe Hintz as well. Then the veteran depth with Sagan, Ben, guys like that. But then you look at the Minnesota Wild roster, and again, like you said, they find ways to win games in unconventional ways in the regular season. Whether or not they can transfer that to the postseason and keep up with some of those young stars forwards, we'll see what happens there. But overall, if the Wild end up winning, I wouldn't be too shocked on this one.
Me either, and I might get a little bit of flack here for picking Dallas. It could go either way, and they'll
I
be
mean,
like, "Look
same.
at that, you friggin' idiot!"
Uh, you're putting it lightly there.
Yeah. Well, I think Dallas. Oh, and I forgot Joe Pavelski.
Yeah, I just opted not to say him.
Yeah. Well, yeah. No, that's fair. Weird team. Yeah, I got stars in 6. Jamie has stars in 7. Now I think I'm going to be interested to hear your take on this one because I think you'll be thoroughly surprised with my breakdown of how this one's going to go. Winnipeg, Vegas.
I think this is a lot closer than people think. I've seen online a lot of people have the Golden Knights winning pretty handily. Um, I don't know. The Jets still have some pretty high key players there, like Mark Scheifele, Blake Wheeler. I know he's gotten older, but he's still a pretty good player in the NHL. Kyle Connor as well. Nikolai Ehlers. Even just at forward, right? I just need 4 guys who are realistically all stars in their own right. Um, that being said, I got the Golden Knights in 6. I got the
Okay.
Golden Knights in 6, and I don't like having that just because it's such a weird roster. Eichel went down there before the playoffs are about to commence. He's gonna come back from what I understand. Um, I don't know. It's such an odd team to kind of look at, like the Golden Knights. They got weird depth in weird areas there. I don't really know how it can stack up against the Jets, ability to kind of, light the lamp. And then even then, the Jets got the better goaltending as well in Connor Hellebuck. End of the day playoffs, I like to go with the teams that have the better goaltending more often than not. But like, I know we kind of talk about this. The Winnipeg Jets just kind of suck. They suck when it matters.
Yeah. No. Well, and Vegas, especially a few years ago when these two teams met, Vegas was kind of like this upstart team. I think a lot of people had the Jets winning that series, moving on to the
Yeah.
Stanley Cup Finals, but it was Vegas who stunned them and then went on to lose to the Washington Capitals. But I think again, I'll never stop beating this drum. A team who has been playing playoff hockey for the last little bit, and even though they've sucked, and they kind of honestly got in because the teams that they were playing with also suck. Calgary Flames, Nashville Predators, and
Oh, yeah,
but
getting spicy.
for what it's worth, one thing that I think is underrated thinking about this is in those games, Connor Hellebuck has been fantastic, and it seems like the guys like Mark Scheifele have sort of started to find their way back. Kyle Connor, Pierre Luc Dubois, even he was hurt for a bit, so people forget that this team was banged up a little bit. So, I think that they're going to be getting a little healthier heading into the playoffs. So I'll say it right now, Jets in 7. Where's Jesse Pollock? He might need a high five.
Yeah, he's swooning somewhere out there. I I don't know. This is I I could see this going to distance for like 7 games with the Jets winning it, based on the roster configuration. But I don't know. This is one of those ones. I'm not going with logic here. I feel like the Jets have the better roster when it comes to being able to win a hockey game. I know they only got in because the teams around them sucked. But that being said, they're still here. They're going to make some kind of noise. Um, I don't know. To me, I'm going with a gut feeling on this one. I, I know I go against my gut sometimes. This time I got to go with it.
Well, and one last thing I would like to contribute again, like when the light shines the brightest, sometimes you need to have actually done it before to
No,
get there. And
no.
for a guy like Jack Eichel, I'm not saying that he will be taken down by the pressure here, but one thing to consider is just that he not him specifically, but when push comes to shove, there's going to be big moments in the series, and I think it's going to be airtight, and they're just going to have to find ways to score in ways that I'm not sure that they do that I think the Winnipeg Jets have. But nonetheless, I think that this one will be interesting. What did you say? Vegas in six?
Yeah, Vegas in 6. But that being said, I'm not super confident in that in that one at
Yeah,
all.
yeah. Well, I'll be completely honest. Outside of what one, Boston, Colorado, I'm not really confident in anything.
No, other than that, literally, it's a coin flip.
No, absolutely. Last one here. Edmonton versus LA. Honestly, I think this is actually the one I'm looking most forward to. We're talking
No,
about the best players in the game here. We're talking about the best players of the game today, and honestly, some of the best players in the game of the past with Drew Doughty and Anze Kopitar. The LA Kings have done a great job at. Honestly, I think them and Dallas are probably two of the best examples of teams that have rebuilt correctly, understanding you, you can keep your core guys who have won you Stanley Cups, but I don't think we can sit here and keep trying to go for it with this specific group. So they took a step back, they rebuilt a bit, and we're here. Now, last year, people tend to forget they were without Drew Doughty. Remember, he was out for a little bit there. So what's your take on this series? I think that this one's going to be even closer than it was last year. It came down decided to 2 goals. It was a late goal from Connor McDavid that did it. What are your thoughts on this? Is it even closer than last year? The margin is even more narrow.
I don't know how close the series can be. I know the Kings are built the right way. From the ground up, they're built from the back end out. They care about defense, while at the same time they have the forwards who can score, points, regular season playoffs, whatever. They have players who they play a unique play style. They're built with interesting makeups. Like Victor Arvidsson, for example, he's a good, secondary scorer for a team, but at the same time, like I find he's kind of hard to play against. He plays the game the right way. He has an interesting play style, like Kopitar as well. Like one of the best two-way forwards in our generation, I'll say, within the last 20 years. It's a hard team to go against. They got Drew Doughty, unlike they did last year. You're adding a guy who's a top 15 defenseman, at one point one of the best in the game. The dude's still like a number one defenseman on just about every NHL team right now. But the part that I kind of have a problem with here in terms of calculating who's going to win, it's how do you go into this series and the guy who just put out one of the best seasons of all time in terms of total points, and Connor McDavid was 153 or something like that. Like how do you h- it seems like he can just score whenever the hell he wants. How do you stop that? Like that's my question. Can any team just say, "Yeah, you're done. You're not doing it. You're done."
I'll raise you on that with one of the better secondary two-way forwards in the game. Philip Deneau, a few years ago, he shut down Austin Matthews. He did contain Connor McDavid somewhat a little bit last year, and I think that it's going to be an all hands on deck kind of thing to be able to contain Connor McDavid, a full fledged defensive effort. But as someone who's followed the LA Kings quite thoroughly this year, I can tell you Mikey Anderson and Drew Doughty has been one of the best shutdown defensive pairings in the NHL this year. And I think if LA can maintain full health throughout this series and a full team effort, I think they can find a way to do this. So that's why I have LA actually winning in 7. And that might be a little bit of an LA bias coming from me here, but you know what? I think Edmonton's beatable, and personally, I think people are too high on them. But
I,
but how aren't you when you have that group?
no, exactly. And so you got two guys who. How many points did Draisaitl have this year? He had over 100 and like.
Yeah, you had a little over 100, yeah, 115.
Yeah, you got a guy with 115 and 153. Like, I know Phil Deneau and like the team did a good job like shutting him down last year, but like I think this is a different Connor McDavid I think this is a different year. Again,
I
I'm
think
not high on the Oilers. I don't like the Oilers. I'm not particularly fond of Connor McDavid either, but I have the Oilers in 6. That being said, I could easily see the Kings in 6. Just for the same reason that you said. They're built the right way. They have some of the best shutdown guys in the league. They got guys in places where it makes it hard to play. They can play the matchup game against these high octane offensive teams so well. And even the guys that they have, on like the wings, for example, Kevin Fiala as well. Guys who can score as well. Like it's not like they're just defensively built. They have guys in places who can put the puck in the net, and the Oilers aren't exactly exactly defensive stalwarts either, right? Jack Campbell kind of sucks. Stuart Skinner, kind of unproven in the sense of longevity. So I don't really know how that's going to play out. But overall, if you look down the roster, if I'm betting on a team to win a game, 5-4, which I think some of these games might have to be won 5-4, given the Oilers' ability to score goals. I just don't know how long the Kings can keep up with the speed of that. But that being said, I'd love to see the LA Kings come out and smoke the Oilers. I'd love for
well,
my bracket to get busted.
well, like you said, it could come down to scoring some games. So I think that I think a big X factor for me is how healthy is Kevin Fiala, and I've no doubt. I think like even if you're banged up, of course you're suiting up this time of year, but just how healthy is he? Gabe Villardi's dealing with something, so
That's
I think
true.
it's a matter of how healthy can you actually get, especially for those offensive weapons who have had great years. But
Hmm.
for what it's worth, I'm not entirely sure how healthy they are. So,
No,
and
eh,
and and we don't have many details. It's a very secretive organization.
no, exactly. And something to add with this as well is, you can play defense against Connor McDavid all you want. Realistically, we've seen in the regular season teams try to do that, and he just finds a hole somehow and just squeezes on through. But with the playoffs, for example, it's not you're not more so just playing zone defense like you are in the regular season to an extent. Like you're more doing man to man, you're doing more pressure, you're applying more pressure, whether it's even like my sticks in a lane or it's, I'm physically putting my body in a position where this human being cannot literally run through my entire physical being. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I feel like all LA really has to do is literally just get in the way. Just put themselves in the way. Be a physical nuisance. You're walking down the aisle at Walmart, you see a screaming 4-year-old, you see these two old dudes, talking with the carts blocking the aisle. Make it so you literally cannot get by.
Well,
You know,
well, one thing, just one last little thing for me here, like on this is, so I was watching it was the Halifax Mooseheads versus the Moncton Wildcats, game one, and Halifax a plethora of offensive weapons, and Moncton shut them down, and they did that because they basically didn't give up any chances in the middle, and they pushed them to the outside, and they capitalized on the errors, and it was a near perfect game. So in order for LA to win, it's going to have to be like that. They're going to have to play a near perfect, complete game, and they're going to have to limit the opportunities. If McDavid gets on the board, your task is going to be to make sure he doesn't do it again, because Connor McDavid could frankly do it 5 times.
if if of all the teams that are in the Western Conference playoffs right now, of all the teams for the Oilers to draw, for them to get the LA Kings, it's the absolute worst matchup for them. I don't know. Like I'd say the Oilers would smoke the Jets, they'd smoke the Golden Knights, they'd smoke the Wild, they'd smoke the Kraken. They'd go pound for pound with the Avs in terms of goal scoring. I don't know how the Star Series would go against the Oilers that way. I don't really know. That's a bit
I
more
think
of a
they're kind of
crapshoot,
just there, but kind of LA light in my opinion.
right? Like the Kings are just built such a unique way of compared to every other team that's in the playoffs. In my opinion, I think this is the absolute worst matchup for the Oilers. And I may have the Oilers going in 6. I'd love to see the Kings just come in and destroy them.
Yeah, no. So ultimately, what do you have? You have
Well, Oilers in 6. Connor McDavid leading the way. Unfortunately,
well, no, that's very fair. So now I think that we can jump over to our overall predictions. Who do you have as your Eastern Conference champion?
so you just want the Eastern Conference. You don't want to hear like the Stanley Cup matchup,
Well,
right?
no, we'll get there. We'll get there.
We'll get there. Okay, I just want to make sure before I say too much here.
Yeah.
You know, I don't like saying it. I got the New York Rangers being the Eastern Conference champions this year. As much as I want to say the Boston Bruins, I think somewhere along the way it's going to catch up to them. They're going to stumble. Somebody's going to stymie them. They're going to find a way to fuck this up. And like, I don't know, the Panthers ain't gotten there. I don't see the Canes doing it. I feel like the Rangers could beat the Leafs and the Lightning, given the Lightning's status this year and with the depth of the scoring that the Rangers have versus how top heavy the Lightning's goal scoring is probably going to end up looking. I don't know the goalie differential between the Rangers and some of these Eastern Conference teams is just so wide. The only one who I'd say matches up pretty squarely would be Vasilevsky and the Lightning. That being said, I could see the Rangers beating the Islanders then as well in that kind of matchup. You go to the goalie matchup. I lean the guy who's been around a little bit longer in terms of the higher caliber there. I don't feel super confident with my Rangers pick, but that being said, I don't think I feel super confident about many of these matchups either. But that being said, what do you got? Who do you think is going to be
Well,
successful in the East?
so I also add the Rangers now,
No
and
way.
it does come down to goaltending. And look, it is a team that went to the conference finals last year and ran into Tampa Bay. And um, you know, again, you go down the list here, but I think so. In theory, if our picks go the way they're going to go and the way that the odds are going to fall, Toronto plays Boston in the second round. You mean to tell me that the winner of that series isn't going to be eating shit? Like, isn't going to be licking their wounds coming up against a team like the Rangers? And who are they going to have to play? The Hurricanes?
Hurricane.
Hurricanes aren't going to make you pay. Like, they're not going to punish you. The Islanders might.
No, exactly. And that being said, like going back to what you said about the Leafs Bruins, if that is round two, for example, that's going to be a war of a series. Boston's looking to make sure Toronto doesn't get any further. Toronto's being looking to go all the way. Then at that point, there's a lot of history there. I feel like that could be a really venomous series. Guys might get put a little bit extra meat in some hits. Whatever team comes out of that series might be a little bit too banged up to be able to compete with the Rangers and their depth. And it's like, they went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year against the Lightning. They added Patrick Kane and Tarasenko. Their young guys got better. I would argue, their roster got better as a whole, right? Philip Chittle's kind of grown into his own a little bit more. I don't know. I really think this year New York Rangers could do it. That being said, I hope a Metropolitan team
Well,
doesn't do it.
you know, one thing that I've actually been considering, my last thing on the Rangers here is that a lot of people are very critical of them with how how they drafted Capo Caco and Alexi Lafreniere, and how they haven't really turned out into what people expected them to become. And then you got Philip Hedl down the middle, but that's becoming an increasingly formidable third line. And like, it doesn't matter how good those guys are right now if they're top line players or not. They're creating a very effective third line, and I think, personally, I think I have Toronto going to the conference finals, but getting goalied. Because would that not be the most Leafs thing to finally overcome your demons and then you get goalied?
Yeah, and then lose like in 6 games after scoring like what 6 goals total through those 6 games. I could see the Leafs.
Yeah, well,
I could see
yeah,
the Leafs
yeah. You
blowing
just
that.
held them 2-1.
And like what you said about that, the formidable Rangers third line, Lafreniere, Kako, Filipino there. It's matchup hell. It's absolute matchup hell. And like young guys, they don't always come in and absolutely light the lamp right off the hop. It that's just not how things work all the time, right? Like not every first overall pick's coming and scoring 150 points right off the bat. And that being said, why are the Rangers going to put Lafreniere in a top six role right now when they don't need to?
And it's working.
And that's it too. Like it's working. They got the depth already. They don't need to experiment with this. Those young guys' time will come. You're only getting they're not getting a whole lot of ice time per game, and they're already being pretty effective with that. Over time, it's just going to grow even better. I don't know. The Rangers are a team to watch for a while here, but unless you don't have anything else to add for the Rangers, who do you got coming out of the West?
I think it's going to be an absolute war, but I do find it kind of hard to not choose the Avalanche here. Originally I had the Stars and I changed it, and I think that's going to be a war of a series. But I do think that we need to go with the team that, like I said, they're 8-1-1 in their last 10. They're scorching hot right now, and especially if they can get a guy like Cale McCarr back, it's looking like their top six defenders like the regulars are all going to be back in the lineup there, and couple that with some of the depth that they've compiled, and their stars are firing on all cylinders. So you know, for what it's worth, I do think like that's sort of what I'm taking into account here now. I will say I'm not necessarily putting the Avs on my bracket challenges. My brain says Avalanche. That's why I'm telling you that here. But my heart says Stars.
And my head and my heart says the Stars as well. Yeah, I got the Stars going to as the Western Conference champs here. My main reason I'm a similar mindset to you with when it comes to the Avs. But my one drawback on that is they're missing Gabe Landeskog, and I feel like at some point that is going to catch up to them. And a team like Dallas, they're so deep everywhere. They've had their young guys be such integral pieces to that roster, this whole year, and they've only gotten better as well. I feel like they have the better goalie than the Avs. I feel like their depth up front might be able to compete with them pretty well in terms of being able to go pound for pound. I think it really comes down to how healthy is Kale McCarr and what kind of impact can he make, and can they make up the difference of Gabe Landeskog being out when Dallas has older guys like Joe Pavelski, Sagan, Ben as well, right? Like,
And just healthy.
exactly, right, and the health of it all as well. So I don't know how well that can go. And even if you want to look to a different matchup, if you want to look at like the youngsters there, Wyatt Johnston versus Alex Newhook. I'd say Wyatt Johnston's way better than Alex Newhook right now. So even if you want to go in terms of like the young guys being a key fixtures of the team, I'd say Wyatt Johnson has him numbered on that. For that reason, I got Dallas going to as the Western Conference champion here.
Okay, who do you have winning the Stanley Cup? Rangers.
Dallas Stars.
Ooh,
I got
well,
the
you
Stars
see, this
winning the.
one when I had Dallas in there, like I
See,
literally, I stared at the screen and I said, I don't even know,
same. I
but
don't know.
I can see it.
Right, it's just one of those things. I feel like the Rangers got the better goalie, but that being said, I got a weird feeling about the Stars. A lot of this core was a lot of this core was on that team that made it to. They played in the Stanley Cup final against Tampa, right?
Yep.
Okay, for some reason I was thinking Montreal, but I'm like, I know that's not right. But no, a lot of this core was on that Stanley Cup final roster. Miro Haskin was there, Jason Roberts and Rupe Hintz. The main Dallas guys then, and Sagan and Ben. A lot of this roster has just gotten better since then. I feel like this may be the time when they can do it. The Avs are a little bit beaten up. The Oilers, I don't think the Oilers would beat the Stars. That's a toss up. That being said, I still think the Stars would beat them just when it comes down to goalie. But I think this might be on the back of Jake Ottinger. I really think it is. He's really starting to come into his own.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a little tough. I don't know. So like it's very close. My gut though will say Rangers over Avalanche in 6 games, and it's simply because of health.
Yeah.
Like I know Patrick Kane's been a bit banged up, but again, like how healthy are these guys? Are they just playing right now because it's playoff time, and then they're in for a long summer of recovery? And to go that distance, even if they sweep the the Kraken in the first round, they're going to have to play a tough Minnesota or Dallas team. They're going to have to find a way to potentially stop Connor McDavid in the conference finals. They're like potentially whoever the hell they play there, the Vegas Golden Knights, even. There's the Western Conference is underrated, and there are a lot of scary teams there. But for what it's worth, I also take Shesterkin. I take the best goalie in the series for that kind of thing, especially against a banged up Avs team. So I say that. You have any more comments before we move to our Conn Smythe?
Realistically, I'm very surprised that we both have very similar, cup final outlooks on this one. I think we got some pretty. We're not normally on the same page for a lot of this type of stuff, so it's weird to see that we're both kind of like lining up on this one to some extent here, which again, kind of odd. But that being said, if the Rangers win the cup, I wouldn't be surprised. I think this might be their chance to do it. Like
But
them and
see,
Dallas are kind of the two. Like I don't want to say dark horse teams to do it, but like they're just so good, like top to bottom. Like it's hard to count two of those teams out.
all of this is good, especially for our viewers, because now they know what not to do when they're doing their brackets. Because chances are, if we're agreeing on something, it's probably wrong.
Right, and
So
even then, we're just about two regular stupid dudes.
Who do you have winning the Conn Smythe?
Man, I don't. My gut says Jake Ottinger, but I feel like it won't be a goalie. I got Jake Ottinger slash Jason Robertson wrote here, just because I don't know. I feel like if they're gonna get here, they're gonna have to at some point. Based on my bracket, I have them at some point playing the Oilers, where I got them beating the Kings. They're probably going to beat the Knights slash Jets then. So at some point, I feel like the Stars are going to have to play the Oilers, and a big factor of that is going to come down to goal scoring. And I feel like their best player is Jason Robertson. So going pound for pound, I feel like that mixed with being able to solve Igor Shesterkin in the finals against the Rangers, goal scoring is going to have to come up. I think it might turn to a shootout at some point for the Stars in the last, 14 games, assuming both go to distance for the, between the Oilers and that kind of thing. I got Jake Ottinger as the main one, though, just because, goalies generally get pretty good looks here. Teams try to insulate the goalies pretty well, but who do you got here? I assume it's going to be somebody from the Rangers, right? It's not going to be a Leon Draisaitl Memorial Cup, lost and was given the MVP.
Well, I debated a bit. Got to go with the goalie here, Shesterkin. Like it's just kind of the thing that team is built around strong goaltending and being able to win a game when the team in front of them can't. Not every team has that. So, and I think to beat the teams that they're going to have to beat in order to beat a scoring team like the Devils, Shesterkin's going to have to be on top of his game to beat the Hurricanes, to beat Toronto and or Boston and or Tampa, whoever the hell they end up playing there, and then to beat the Avalanche. I just think that all those are going to be tough outs, and I think that is going to be in no small part thanks to Shesterkin. I think he's, I got a feeling he's like if they go all the way, it's gonna be the kind of thing where he posts 4 or 5 shutouts along the way, and I just find it hard to go with the Rangers and not pick him as my Conn Smythe.
No, exactly. Like, I don't like saying that. I don't like saying the goalie is the team's best player. I feel like that's kind of weak. You can just because they don't play every game. I mean, obviously Shesterkin's probably different. He plays he plays a bunch, but it's just one of those things. He is their best player, so it's like realistically, the best players should be coming up in the biggest moments to win these games. So it's like like you said, how do you go against a guy of that caliber, right?
Well, exactly. I think that pretty much wraps it up, though. I
Yeah.
don't know if there's many more thoughts. So now we're gonna have a little bit of fun here before we wrap up the show. We're gonna do a fantasy draft. I've done zero prep for this. I don't know if you have.
Oh man, I kind of forgot we were doing this, so I have no prep.
Yeah. So not even sure how we should determine first overall.
Rock paper scissors live on cam.
Sure, we can try.
Yeah, we
Okay.
can see how well this goes. Might be a crapshoot. So three,
Okay.
two, one.
Are we doing
Then
shoot?
yeah, do you want to do like three,
Rock,
two,
paper,
one,
scissors, shoot.
shoot? And we go on shoot. Okay.
Okay. Okay. 3, 2, 1.
Yep.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Okay. Yeah, you got her.
So I got
The
the
first
first.
overall pick. So what are we thinking? A lot of different ways you can go with this, but
So
I think it's
you know,
obvious.
my cup champ. I got Dallas. I'm not going with a Dallas player here. I think I gotta go. I gotta go Connor McDavid.
I think you have to. I think that you'd be nuts not to. So I'm just writing you down here. So McDavid.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so
So and just make sure
yeah.
we're doing like one guy at each position. So like, are we doing like one
Wait, so
forward?
so a center, left wing, right wing, left defense, right defense, goalie, and one utility.
I'm just getting a list wrote here.
I just thought the utility could be fun. Add some value to some other guys there.
Um,
Um, so yeah, explain why McDavid.
he's literally the best player in the game.
Enough said. Okay, moving on.
Yep, there you go.
That's the show.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I think that's pretty self-explanatory there. Scoring comes at a premium at this time of year, but I'm going to go with Cale Makar. I just don't think that there's many guys at the defense position who can do what he does. And for a guy who facilitates so much offense and contributes in so many different areas of the game, I think it's hard not to go with Cale Makar. Second overall here, but I actually think I kind of messed up on that, but I can't take it back now. But you know what? It is my first.
No worries. Third overall here. I feel, right wing. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go Pasternak.
Yeah, pasta.
Just for the sense of I'm I may have I may have the Rangers going to the Cup Finals, but that being said, the Bruins are still going to go hella deep. And that being said, I don't have them winning the Cup, therefore they will win the Cup. So I'm at least going to have a guy who's going the distance there.
Well, no, exactly. I think that that's definitely the way to go there. And Pasternak is just absolutely ridiculous too. So, I don't think you can go wrong there. With the fourth overall pick here, I'm going to choose a man to peel some points off of here, Leon Draisaitl.
Whoa, what the
And
heck?
considering just how last year it was just so ridiculous with how he played, basically with a broken ankle or whatever he was playing with there, and he still managed to put up a ridiculous amount of points. So, I think Leon Draisaitl's the wave here. So ultimately, that's what I'll go with.
Uh, I think it's about time I take a defender off the board here. I'm gonna go with Adam Fox. You know, again, the number one guy on a team that's realistically going to be a cup contender for for the next couple of years, and realistically is going to put up a bit of a fight this year. I may as well go with the guy who's probably going to go deep in a good system. So Adam Fox is my guy with the fifth.
My guy with number 6, Mitchell Marner, and I think, um, especially in fantasy pools, I think he's going to have a little more value than a guy like Austin Matthews, where I think Matthews is going to have a little bit more responsibility to kind of stick around to the perimeter and play the center position. But Mitch Marner is just such a dynamic distributor, and I think he can get on the board in a lot of different ways. So I think Mitch Marner is going to be a key factor to seeing whether or not that power play can get going at the right time. So that is why he is my pick.
Interesting, interesting. I do have to ask: is Nylander classified as a right wing or a left wing? I feel like he's mainly a right wing, right?
You get a utility spot too, so you can take him.
This is true. I'm slapping Nylander in utility.
Nylander.
If a part of doing fantasy drafts is about having fun with it as well. So I'm going to throw in a guy who realistically, maybe the Leafs get some momentum if they beat the Lightning in 7, like I have predicted here. Maybe they find a way to upset Boston. Maybe to go to round 3. Because realistically, for like playoff pools and like playoff fantasy, you want the guys who are going deep. You just want quantity over quality to an extent. So
Yep.
I'll
No,
go with Nylander at the U.
Nylander at the U. I think that that's a good one there. Decisions. I think for my next pick, I will take Igor Shesterkin. Of course, I had him essentially winning the Conn Smythe and the Stanley Cup, so I think that that's
Yeah.
a no-brainer for me. And honestly, might even be one of the better goalies in the playoffs. Not even one of the better ones. I think he might be the best. But and that's no disrespect to Andrei Vasilevsky, but he's been there and he's done that. But Shesterkin's on a bit of a younger, up and coming team here, and for what it's worth, I think if the Rangers are going to win, it's going to be in no small part due to Igor Shesterkin. So who do you got next?
I'm gonna, I'll raise your goalie with a goalie. I'll take Jake Ottinger. I'll rely on my bracket on this one. But that being said, now that that's the case, they're probably getting swept by the Minnesota in round 1. Just how these things seem to operate at times. But a similar reason that you said, like you said with Shesterkin, the team's young as well, up and coming. The team's kind of growing with them. Ottinger's surrounded by a bunch of young players as well. They're all seemingly kind of growing at a similar trajectory there. So I feel like even for future years, he's going to grow into that system really well. So I'll take Jake Ottinger and see how it goes, even though biting the bullet with Vasilevsky still on the board. But
That's great. I'm surprised none of us have taken Matthews, but I mean, I guess the vector of potentially not making it out of the first round kind of hurts the
yeah,
value there.
and I mean Nylander's better than him anyway. So
No, we'll see. There's a case they tied in goals. So,
that's what determines good hockey players.
next pick, I take Mikko Rantanen. Pretty good
Slit.
there. For a team that I think has shown that they can go deep. I think that that's a pretty good little ad there. And for what it's worth, the guy just scored 55 goals. So
Right.
you got a left wing and a lefty to fill, same as me.
Lefty. I'm just taking a look here. I'm just trying to find like handedness and such. McAvoy. Yeah, man. Well, you know what? I don't know how I'm going to feel about this one, but I'll probably go with the guy who's top 3 defenseman in the league. I'll go Victor Hedman.
Good
I
call.
know, I know, I got a guy from the Leafs and the Lightning here already. But that being said, I may as well get one guy who's going to get out of that round alive. So
Well, and I will raise you here. Left wing Artemi Panarin. I think again, like the offense is going to have to come at a big time here, and they're going to have to pull through in big moments here for the Rangers to really beat the kinds of teams that they're going to have to beat. So, I think Artemi Panarin, and for what it's worth, I did have a few guys there. We'll do some honorable mentions here of guys we were thinking of here at the very end, and then wrap up the show. But I have a lefty, and Jamie has a left wing. So, who do you got?
I'm just taking a look at some left wings here just to see, yeah, not to go too far to this, but I'm looking at a fantasy hockey top 50 left wing ranking from NHL.com there from October 6th. The number 50 slot, Yuri Slavkovsky.
Really?
Yeah, that's who's at number 50 as of October
He's like
6th.
eons ago.
Yeah, right. Is Kaprizov still on the board? I couldn't remember if
He sure is.
Yeah, I'll go Cap.
Right,
I don't
because you have
know.
Minnesota. Wait, no, you're Dallas.
I got Dallas. I'm just going best player here.
Nope, that is definitely fair. At left defense for a team that I do think is going to go kind of deep here. I think it's going to be very hard for me not to take Miro Heiskanen. I know I had Colorado going deep there, but I think Heiskanen has the potential to be a bit of a world beater at this time of year, and like he has a big opportunity. He's in the prime time, and were they here last year? Were they in the playoffs? Dallas?
Miro Heiskanen?
Yeah, was Dallas in the playoffs last year?
I
I
don't know.
think they were.
I'm
Bit of an idiot for that, but
I'm gonna see if I can pull up a list here right quick from last season. Yeah, Colorado won. I'm trying to see if I can find anything here. Yeah, Dallas made it. Jeebus. Yeah, he played Calgary.
Right. Because Ottinger had that massive game 7 where he stopped like 50-something shots and lost in double overtime or something like that. Oh,
yeah.
boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
Do you have any honorable mentions, guys you were heavily leaning towards?
I feel like a guy I didn't take and I really wanted to. I debated with the last pick. I was debating Evander Kane as the left wing there to pair with Connor McDavid. I feel like at some point, those kind of guys carry a lot of value. Maybe like a guy like Chris Kreider, those types of guys. Tarasenko as well. But again, like why would you take him if Panarin as well? Patrick Kane's a thought. Vasilevsky is there. I'm trying to think of other goalies. Like Gorgiev as well, if you're thinking the Avs are going to go deep. Sorokin, if you're an Islanders fan. But that being said, I don't even think they think they're going to go far. But yeah, I'd be interested to hear some of your honorable mentions here.
Well, obviously, Austin Matthews, Nathan McKinnon can't look past them. Brad Marchand.
Man, we're really dumb. There's a lot of names we left off.
Bergeron.
Yeah. Kopitar as well, if you want to look at that.
Kopitar, Drew Doughty.
Dwoo.
John Tavares even. Did we
Morgan
take
Riley.
Lightning? Yeah, you took Hedman.
I took Hedman. I'm like
Stamkos, Kucherov.
Man, Kucherov's overrated.
No.
Even though, like, I'm pretty sure of like the last like 10 years or so, he has like over like in terms of playoff numbers, I'm pretty sure he has like he has like the most points in the last like decade or something.
Oh yeah,
I thought I saw a stat like that.
Times.
Right, like he made it so many times. He's gone deep so many times. He's put up a bunch of points every time they've gone deep too. So it's like,
yeah. And for you who had Dallas going deep, you didn't pick Robertson.
Nah, I don't know. Remember last year we did I think it was last year or the year before we did that play-in pool, like the fantasy one. Remember that for the playoffs?
Oh my God.
Yeah. So like we had our brackets made and then we did our draft and it's like every guy I drafted, I didn't really pick I didn't go based on like what my bracket was and I ended up winning that. So maybe that's kind of my logic here, seeing what can happen. But
Yeah, well, I remember that one because I was saying, "Oh yeah, Florida could totally beat Tampa Bay," and then I loaded up on Florida and Toronto, and then I was like, "Yes, Toronto's up 3-1 on Montreal," and then yeah, oh
Then
boy,
Corey Perry came out of nowhere.
oh, Corey Perry and
Yeah.
Lasai. Anyway,
Yeah.
any other comments here before we wrap up?
This is going to be an interesting playoffs. I'd be interested to see how quickly to see if there's going to be any perfect brackets this year because normally brackets get shut down really quick. Take a
There's
look at
always
March
one or two
Madness.
upsets.
Right, there's always one or two like upsets that you don't really expect. So like, in before the Panthers end up beating the Bruins in like game 7 or something.
You know, it's gonna happen. It's the playoffs. It's a different beast. Anything can happen.
Right? Makachuk's built for it. He's the
He's
right kind of
both
player.
forward. Yeah, no, that team definitely is. Yeah, that'll wrap it up here for us for our NHL playoff preview at H2Go on Area 51. We are the game. But yeah, no, thank you for tuning in, and we promise we'll be bringing you some regular content here throughout the playoffs, some fantasy advice here, and especially for your pools to help you try to win those. And we hope everyone actually had a good time with fantasy this year and wrapped it up with a championship or two. And for what it's worth, it kind of sucks, but it's nice to get a little bit of a break here. But nonetheless, I'm Sean Crocker. You can follow me at Shawnee Hockey, and you can follow Jamie at Jamie Malloy _DH. And yeah, feel free to interact with us on Twitter.
Yeah.
Just keep it real and buckle up because I think it's going to be a fun next little bit here.
This is going to be a long one, boys. Strap in for the ride. It's going to be a fun one as well. But that being said, I do like Sean mentioned. I hope you guys won some championships this year. Went deep. Maybe you won the first overall pick. Maybe you get Connor Bedard. Hopefully, you get Connor Bedard as a flyer. But other than that, it's nice that fantasy's kind of over for the season in terms of like the regular stuff. So it's gonna be a fast summer. So try and enjoy the playoffs while you can.
Absolutely. Anyway, keep it real, everyone, and we'll be right back with you next week.
Peace out.